Welcome to another deep dive. You know we love getting your requests, and this one really stood out. You've sent us some incredibly powerful historical writings about the experiences of black people in America. And right at the center of it all is David Walker's appeal to the colored citizens of the world.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a powerful piece of writing.
Now, this isn't just some, you know, dusty old document from 1829. This appeal was considered radical, even dangerous for its time.
It really was. Yeah, it shook things up.
So we're going to take a deep dive into it today, unpack its key arguments, and explore what makes it so impactful, even today.
One of the things that makes this appeal so fascinating is how directly it challenges the accepted narratives of the time. Walker, a free black man living in Boston, he doesn't just plead for better treatment, he delivers a searing indictment of American hypocrisy and a powerful call to action.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't hold back.
hmm
So to really understand the weight of this appeal, I think we have to start with the historical context. What was the reality for black people in America when Walker was writing?
Well, you have to remember that slavery was deeply entrenched in American society at that time. And the brutality of that system was just undeniable. The separation of families, the physical abuse, the denial of basic human rights, this was all woven into the fabric of daily life for enslaved people.
It's hard to even imagine.
It was a horrific reality.
Walker doesn't shy away from any of it, does he?
Not at all. In fact, he directly challenges the idea that slavery in America was somehow more civilized than in other parts of the world. This was a narrative that many white Americans clung to.
Almost like they tried to make it seem less horrific.
Exactly. But Walker completely shatters that illusion. He draws a direct parallel between the experiences of enslaved people in America to those in ancient societies, like the Egyptians and the Spartans. He even describes a son being forced to whip his own mother,
Yeah.
a husband forced to beat his pregnant wife.
Those details are just heartbreaking. It makes you realize this wasn't some abstract concept. It was people's lives being ripped apart.
Absolutely, and that's what makes Walker's appeal so powerful. It forces people to confront the brutal reality of slavery, no matter how much they try to dress it up or justify it. And that comparison to ancient societies, it really dismantles the idea that American slavery was somehow benevolent or a necessary evil.
So Walker's pulling back the curtain,
Yeah.
exposing the truth for what it was. Now, he also talks about the role of ignorance in perpetuating slavery. What was he getting at there?
Well, Walker argues that keeping black people in a state of ignorance was a deliberate tactic to maintain the system of slavery. By denying access to education and information, those in power could control the narrative and prevent any organized resistance.
So it's not just about physical chains, it's about mental chains as well.
Precisely. Walker saw knowledge as a path to liberation. He understood that if black people were aware of their own history, their own potential, they would be much harder to control.
It's like he was saying, you can chain our bodies, but you can't chain our minds. And there's that anecdote he tells about a black man who boasts about his son's good education. And the reason he thinks his son is well educated, because he can write neatly. It's like the bar was set so incredibly low.
That's such a poignant anecdote, and it perfectly illustrates Walker's point. It highlights the limited aspirations imposed on black people, the ways in which their potential was deliberately stifled. Imagine a world where simply learning to write neatly is seen as the pinnacle of achievement. It's tragic.
It's a tragedy, yeah. And it makes you think about how access to information and education still impacts equality today. I mean, we've come a long way, but are we really free if there are still these systemic barriers to knowledge and opportunity? Are we still fighting some of the same battles, just in different forms?
That's a question worth pondering. Walker's insight into the connection between ignorance and oppression is as relevant today as it was in 1829.
Absolutely. Okay, so Walker takes on the brutality of slavery and the deliberate use of ignorance to keep black people down. But he doesn't stop there, does he? He also goes after the American church. Why was he so critical of them?
Walker saw the American church as deeply complicit in the system of slavery. He points out this incredible hypocrisy of sending missionaries to convert heathens abroad while turning a blind eye to the suffering of black people right here in America.
So he's basically saying, you're worried about saving souls overseas, but what about the souls being crushed under the weight of slavery right here at home?
Exactly. He calls them out on it. He talks about preachers who not only condoned slavery, but actively discouraged black people from seeking solace in religion. There's this one scene he describes that's really chilling. A preacher at a camp meeting witnesses black people being brutally attacked for praying, and he does nothing to intervene.
It's hard to even fathom that.
It's a powerful indictment of the church's role in perpetuating injustice.
Yeah.
And, it raises a question that's still relevant today. How do religious institutions navigate the tension between their spiritual mission and their responsibility to address social justice issues? Are they part of the problem or part of the solution?
That's a question that continues to be debated today. And Walker's critique just adds another layer to that conversation. Now, another thing Walker tackles is the colonization movement. For those who might not be familiar, this was a movement gaining traction at the time that advocated for sending free black people back to Africa. What did Walker think about that idea?
Oh, Walker saw right through the motivations behind the colonization movement. While some proponents genuinely believed it was a benevolent solution, others saw it as a way to get rid of free black people who might inspire rebellion among the enslaved.
So it was really about protecting the institution of slavery.
Exactly.
That-
It was a way to appear to be doing something good while actually just reinforcing the power structure. And Walker understood that the very foundation of America was built on the backs of black labor. He argued that black people had a rightful claim to this land, and that sending them away was a way of denying them their rightful place in American society.
He even quotes Henry Clay, a prominent supporter of colonization, who talked about the moral fitness of sending black people back to Africa.
That quote is so revealing, this idea of moral fitness, while completely ignoring the brutality of the slave trade that brought those people here in the first place. It's astounding.
Talk about a contradiction. It's like this constant clash between the ideals of freedom and the reality of racial prejudice. Makes you wonder how much this debate about belonging and citizenship still plays out in America today. Are we truly a nation that embraces all its people, or are there still echoes of that exclusionary mindset?
Those are questions that we as a society are still grappling with. And Walker's insights into the colonization movement provide a valuable historical lens through which to view our own struggles with issues of race, belonging, and equality.
Absolutely. It's incredible how a document written almost 200 years ago can still feel so relevant today. It's like Walker is speaking directly to us across the centuries, challenging us to confront these uncomfortable truths and to continue the fight for justice.
And he's not just identifying the problems, he's offering solutions. Walker's appeal is a call to action, a demand for change. He's urging black people to recognize their own agency, to stand up and claim their rightful place in American society.
And that call to action doesn't end with Walker's generation, does it? It feels like he's passing the torch to us, urging us to continue the struggle for equality.
Absolutely. And to understand the full weight of that call to action, I think we need to delve into the radical nature of Walker's proposals. He wasn't asking for incremental change. He was demanding a complete transformation of American society.
Yeah, he was a revolutionary thinker for sure. So let's dive into that.
Walker's appeal, it wasn't just some, philosophical treatise. It was a blueprint for resistance.
Yeah, and that's what made it so dangerous in the eyes of those in power.
Absolutely. I mean, distributing the appeal was actually illegal in the South, and even in the North, there were attempts to suppress it.
Wow. So what do you think made it so threatening to the status quo?
Well, imagine you're a slave owner in the 1830s. You built your entire life, your wealth, your sense of security, on the backs of enslaved people. Then you hear about this document circulating, a document that directly challenges your entire worldview,
Yeah.
your sense of power, even your claim to being a, moral Christian person.
It must have felt like the world was turning upside down.
Exactly. Walker's appeal was a direct confrontation, not just with the institution of slavery, but with the deeply ingrained racism that justified it.
He's not pulling any punches. He's calling out the hypocrisy, the brutality,
Yeah.
the sheer inhumanity of the system.
And he does it with such force and conviction that it's impossible to ignore. He argues that black people are not only entitled to freedom, but also to full equality and citizenship.
Wow, can you imagine the courage it took to write and distribute this appeal, knowing the potential consequences?
I mean, he was risking his life. There were reports of rewards being offered for his capture, dead or alive.
It's incredible that this document even survived to be read by us today.
It really is. It's a testament to the power of ideas and to the bravery of those who are willing to risk everything to spread them.
Makes you realize that the fight for justice has always been a dangerous one.
Absolutely. And the voices of those who have been marginalized and oppressed have always had the power to challenge the status quo and inspire change.
And Walker's appeal is a perfect example of that. It's amazing how something written almost 200 years ago can still feel so relevant today.
Well, that's because the themes that Walker explores, racism, oppression, the struggle for equality, those are universal themes that continue to resonate throughout history.
They really are.
Hmm.
It makes you wonder, what would Walker think about America today? Would he be encouraged by the progress that's been made? Or would he still see those same systems of oppression at work?
That's a fascinating question. I think he would be both heartened by the advances and deeply concerned by how much work still needs to be done. Remember, Walker didn't just call for the abolition of slavery. He called for a radical restructuring of American society, a society built on principles of justice, equality, and true liberty for all.
He was way ahead of his time.
He was. And in many ways, we're still trying to catch up to his vision. We're still grappling with the legacy of slavery and racism and trying to build a more just and equitable future.
So where do we go from here? What can we learn from Walker's appeal and apply it to the challenges we face today?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is that silence is complicity. We can't just be passive observers. We have to actively challenge injustice and work to create a more equitable world.
Just like Walker challenged the injustices of his time.
Exactly. His appeal is a reminder that change doesn't happen overnight. It takes sustained effort, courage, and a willingness to speak truth to power.
And to never give up hope. Walker believed that a better future was possible, but he knew it wouldn't come easily.
He knew it would require struggle, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to justice.
So as we reflect on Walker's appeal, let's not just admire its historical significance, but let's also let it challenge us, inspire us, and guide us as we navigate the complexities of our own time.
Because the echoes of Walker's words can be heard in the calls for social justice that we hear today, demands for equality, for recognition, for an end to systemic oppression.
It's like a bridge connecting the past to the present, showing us that the fight for freedom and justice is a continuous journey.
And reminding us that we all have a role to play in shaping that journey.
Walker's appeal is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are always those who dare to hope for a better future.
And who are willing to fight for it no matter the cost. Their courage and their vision light the path for generations to come.
It's just incredible how relevant Walker's words still feel today.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you think about movements like Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
That demand for recognition, for respect, for basic human dignity. I mean, that's a thread that runs straight from Walker's appeal to the protests we see on our streets today.
I agree. It's like Walker's words are still echoing, still urging us to confront these uncomfortable truths about our nation's past and present.
Yeah. And to use our knowledge of that past to build a better future. I mean, that's what history is for, isn't it? It's not just about remembering. It's about learning from the past so that we don't repeat the same mistakes.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Walker's appeal, I think the question we're left with is, what are we going to do with this knowledge? How are we going to use it to make a difference in our own time?
That's a really good question. And it's one that each of us has to answer for ourselves, But I think one thing is clear. We can't afford to be silent.
We can't just sit on the sidelines.
Exactly. We have a responsibility to speak out against injustice, to amplify the voices of those who are marginalized, and to work tirelessly for a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Because that's the legacy that David Walker left us. A legacy of courage, of conviction, and of a relentless pursuit of justice.
And as we go forward, let's keep his words in our hearts and let them fuel our own commitment to building a more equitable and just world for all.
Well said. So to everyone listening, we encourage you to seek out Walker's appeal. Read it, reflect on it, and let it spark conversations and actions that contribute to a better future. And that's it for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more fascinating explorations of history and ideas. Until then, stay curious and keep those requests coming.